Hi, this is going to be a video I record on my Android because I'm kind of too sick to stand up, about how the meter works because I'm too sick, okay? So, like, I've got to transfer the knowledge I've got to somebody, and I don't know who God's going to hire, so I just have to scattershot it out there and see who picks it up. All right? In this case, our object of study is going to be the meter in, this is Matthew. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. Matthew 24:25. All right. About Russia. Because it's I newly understand what kind of story Matthew 24, which is talking about everybody. But in each country's case, you have to go to each country's history to see how its words that are in this text you see on screen, how its words apply to that given country. All right? Because, I'm probably saying this in the wrong order. Let me start over. The whole purpose of New Testament prophecy is not to tell you when the rapture is, but to tell you what time it is if you're still on earth. You don't need to know when the rapture happens, because when the rapture happens, you're not going to be here. All right? So you don't need prophecy for when you're not here. You only need prophecy for when you are here. So just all prophecies like that. In other words, why give somebody prophecy about the future? Because they're going to live in it. I don't need prophecy about the past except to know that it got fulfilled, so that I know the way God says a thing, so that I know how to read it from my own time and in the future. You get that? We have to know what God said in the past that got fulfilled, so we know how he talks. Because we're going to have to know what time it is. Just like Israel was always supposed to know what time it was. Every single year is mapped in the Bible. I'm not kidding. Scholars don't know this because they're really bad at math. They screwed up Daniel 9, and everybody's been in the dark ever since. When Daniel says 490 years, why does he pick that number? Nobody even bothered to ask. Okay? Why did Daniel pick, or God pick? Why did God pick 490 years when he replies to Daniel? Daniel doesn't even ask him what that number means, which means Daniel already knew. Well, if Daniel already knew what 490 was, then somehow the Bible's been talking about it for a very long time. Okay, yeah, it does. All of the Bible dates are based on the 490. The 490 is a grant of time. It is a default grant of time. 490 plus 70 plus 490 equals 1050, which we truncate to 1,000. All right, because the last 50 years is for evangelism to get people to be saved. All right? So those numbers are all in the Bible, but we don't see how well they're organized. All right? Well, one of the organization mechanisms that God uses is what you see on screen. Every single word in the Bible is metered. The 7 meter relates to time, 7 days in a week. All right? So, by the time you get to the New Testament, God is still metering time, because we still have to know what time it is, but we don't have to know what time it is if we're not here. We only need to know what time it is if we are here. So we get prophecy about the tribulation because there will be people who are here then. We got prophecy about the Old Testament because there are people who were there then. So if it's past, you learn how God explains it. If it's future, you take what God explained before and you apply all the same principles to the explanation you get now about a future you do not know. But you're going to be in it, so you have to learn it. All right? Sorry for the side trip, but that's what we're doing with this. So now what I'm basically doing is verifying how God talked about past with respect to church after 30 AD when Christ died. That's what this Matthew passage is. And there are other New Testament books that do the same thing. There are at least 6 chapters we've found so far that literally craft an annual schedule for church so church can know while she's down here what time it is. All right? So for the Russian church, all right, or really it's not Russia, but Ukraine, what time is it in any given year? And if you were living in China, you'd be looking at the same text to find out what time it is for China. Okay? And I'll be covering that in future videos. Right now, I want you to understand we are testing what Matthew says in light of Russian history. So what I'm going to do is I take this text. It's in Greek, but I'll translate it for you. Okay, you can follow along in English. And then these are the years, this last column. You add 30 to it in order to get AD. And then we're just going to basically look up what AD, and then see what the text says, and then see how it applies to Russia, or Ukraine, really, most of the time. Okay? Now, that's really important to talk about Ukraine, Russia, because it's a major theme of Bible in the main topic of prophecy in the New Testament is about how church, literally church, becomes the Antichrist. You won't hear that said in pulpits. They sort of mask some aspects of this story. They say, oh, the Catholic Church is the Antichrist. Well, it's really not the Catholic Church, but it is the church. Which part of church, which is all the believers, which part of us is going to become the Antichrist? The Antichrist comes from Christians. The major doctrine in the New Testament that nobody covers. The text is real bald about it, bald enough so that for 500 years, everybody's been looking at the Vatican and saying they're the ones who are going to be the Antichrist. Okay, but that's not what the text says. The text says it's Christian. The question is where Christian? It's not restricted to the Vatican. In fact, the Vatican really doesn't even count because the Vatican is a place, not a person. All right? So all those Christians that we've been hearing, including my own pastor taught this, oh, it's the Catholic Church who's going to be the Antichrist in the future. Calvin started that 500 years ago. It's like nobody reads the prophecy. The prophecy's in Daniel 11. It's a guy, a person who's a Gentile, who lines up with an Antichrist who's a Jew, and between them they make the pact. That's Daniel 9:27, and that's what brings, the tribulation to a close. They do it at the mid-trib. Okay, but they both are alive prior. They both have a lifetime prior. They both have a background prior. And so what is that? The other thing you need to know is because the rapture is not predicted, Satan's always trying to make this happen in every generation. So in our generation, who's he trying to make it happen with? Well, the obvious answer is Trump and Putin, which, I've covered in prior videos. In this one, we're looking at the Russia side because I didn't know enough about Russia. All right, so I've spent a lot of time introducing this. I think I'll cut this video and then we'll go on to the next increment. How do I turn this off? Oh, I think I turn it off this way, right? Yeah.